Hi everyone, welcome to Lord of Blights Masterclass Part 6. So in the last part we painted the wood on the model, so you should all have that done by now. And the reason we painted that in the order was so that we could go into the metallics, which is next. So all of this banding around the shield, that'll be in metallics, and there's some metallics on the model. So we're going to go around and start painting those now. So we're going to paint these metallics that we're doing today. These are going to be in a coppery colour, so we're going to be using Screaming Bell. We're going to add a bit of water to that on the palette. Basically, we're going to start painting all these areas. So I'll show you which areas that we're going to do as we go along. So we want this warm coppery colour to contrast with all of the cool greens that we've got on the model. So I'm just going to paint all the banding on the shield. And I'm going to paint the hammerhead, all of that, and this area as well, so the whole of that. I'm going to paint the handle on the dagger copper. I'm going to leave the blade. I'm going to paint the bell there, the Screaming Bell, obviously, and this spike here, and the Screaming Bell, and these symbols here. I'm going to do those. So I'm going to do all of these. I'm going to take a couple of coats, I think, keep paint thin, and then I'll come back and show you what they look like once they're done. Okay, so we've got all the metal areas base coated now with Screaming Bell. So I'll just show you the areas that we've done. So just there on the blade on the shoulder, just the icon on the shoulder pad, and the bell there. See that? So it took a couple of thin down coats. So just the bell there on the gallows, and the shield. It's quite a lot on the shield. I just decided to do the whole lot, and then the back of the shield as well. And the hammer, just the hammer head, end of the hammer here, and then the icon on the van brace, and also the dagger there, the handle for the dagger. So just having painted it, it seemed, obviously, because it's not shaded or highlighted, it's quite a flat colour, but it's very, very strong orange colour, so it's contrasting heavily with the green, which is what we want. But it seems like really strong, especially with the amount that's on here as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to shade and highlight it now. We're going to put some different tones into the highlights and into the shading as well to knock it back a little bit so it's not so harsh. First thing we're going to do a couple of highlights first. So what I'm going to use is Brass Scorpion. So just adding that onto the palette and mixing a bit of water with it. Brass Scorpion's not as orange, so it should knock out a little bit of the colour from it, which will help as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Brass Scorpion, thin it down, and we're going to go over most of what we've just base coated. So really it was just an undercoat for all the colours that we're going to be adding over the top, cover over that black. And then we're going to be going over most of the areas, just leaving the Screaming Bell just in some of the deepest recesses. So you can see I'm just really just doing an overbrush now. So I use the term overbrush, and it's like a dry brush except with wet paint, and you're really just going over the main surfaces. So you don't have to be really neat with it, just as long as it doesn't run into all the recesses. Just establishing that colour over most of the metal areas. And we're going to be shading with washes anyway, so don't worry about going into too many recesses if you do. So I'll be doing that over the shield and then over all of these other areas as well. Just basically just going over pretty much all of those metallic areas again with this paint, but just leaving the Screaming Bell in the deepest recesses. So I'm going to do that and then show you how it looks. Okay, so I've got the Brass Scorpion layer done now. You can see there it's just knocked back the quite orange finish of the Screaming Bell. So it's just going to tone those colours down a bit, and I'm going to keep working up the highlights now. So I'll show you. I've done it on all those areas there. On him as well. So we just left the Screaming Bell in the recesses in the darkest areas. So what we're going to do now is we're going to mix the Brass Scorpion with Stormhose Silver on the palette. So I'd say about 30% Stormhose Silver to 70% Brass Scorpion, and add a bit of water to that. Then we're going to start highlighting up. So rather than just getting smooth highlights, this metal's obviously got holes in it and things like that. So we're going to try and get a bit of that texture in to the metal areas as well. So rather than just highlighting. We're going to do something similar to what we did with the green armour, whereas we're just going to sort of start heavily stippling on where you would normally highlight, so concentrating on these top areas. But with this highlight colour, we're going to go over that. All those areas. You can be quite loose with it. So we only added, it was 70-30 mix, so it's not a massive jump, but it's going to gradually highlight up those metal areas. So I'll do that on there. Do it across all of the metallic areas, so where you would normally highlight. What we'll do is we'll leave the bottom of the shield down here, and we'll just concentrate on the top. So you can see it's a very sort of heavy stipple that we're doing. We want this metal to look battered and chipped and rusty. And it's been in the wars. So I'll do that on there, and we'll do the same on the hammer as well and all the other areas. So you can see on the hammer there, it's got loads of holes and it's quite damaged. So just blobbing on this highlight colour where we would want it. So you can be quite loose with it to start with. So I'll go over all of these metal areas and then I'll show you how it looks once it's done. And you can have a look in a minute. Okay, so we've got that highlight stipple stage done now. So you can see there we've just, it's really faint, but you can just see we've started building up some texture on there as well, which is also working as our highlights. Probably the back of the shield there, you can see that there's some texturing, and I've done that on all of those areas. Just taking the colour out a little bit, adding a little bit of texture, and that's on hammer and all the other parts as well. Just show you on there. Sides. Yeah. And we're going to keep going now, so I'm going to add some more Stormhost Silver to that mix that you've got on your palette. So it's more of a 70% Stormhost Silver now and 30% Brass Scorpion, so it's quite light. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do the same thing again, but just hitting the raised areas even more so more focusing more at the top now, keeping more control with the stipple effect, so it's not so loose. So really just where you would normally paint a highlight, we're putting this stippling instead. It's good when you're doing this effect because you don't have to worry about blending and being smooth, but it gives you a nice finish as well, and it works well on some miniatures. So you can see I'm just going over the top of these orbs here, not underneath. I know it's probably not picking up very well on the camera because it's metallic, but you get the idea. So I'll do that, and then also I'll do the same where you would normally place your highlights. So I'll just stipple there. I'll do that over the shield, and I'll do it over all the other areas as well, just like we've just done. There's quite a lot of metal, so showing the whole thing would bore you to death, so I'm just going to do it and then show you how it looks, and you guys get the idea. And as always, there'll be pictures, reference pictures on Instagram afterwards as well, so you can have a really good look if you want to. Yeah, I'm just going to go over all of this now with that mix, and we'll come back and see how it looks. Okay, so we've got that highlight stippled stage done now, so you can see that the metal's getting a little bit paler there. We picked out some highlights. So we'll do a bit of shading now. So first I'll just show you how that looks there. Back of the shield, just a little bit more texture being picked up. Same on the hammer. Same on this guy as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put some shading on just to knock that colour back a little bit more. Still quite strong. So I'm just going to use some Agrax Earthshade, and I'm just going to use that. I'm not going to thin it down or anything, so it's straight out of the pot because it's not a very strong in pigment anyway. So, and then we're just going to drop that in to all the recessed areas. You can be quite generous with this, just allow it to run in. And it's also going to dull the shininess of the metal down a little bit as well, which is what we want. We don't want very shiny metal. So we're just going to keep washing that in all those areas. And it's probably going to, we're going to wash it on, let it dry, and then repeat again in the areas where we want to. Because like I say, it's not very strong in pigment, so we can put a little bit more on. But this is really going to knock back that shininess of the metal, which we don't want too much. So all these pitted areas, we can drop it in there as well. Focus on the bottom of these areas. You can see I'm being quite heavy with it. Allow it to run in. Just over there. I'm just going to go over all of that. I'm going to do the same on all the other areas as well. Like I say, I'll let it dry and then I'll go over it again. So I really want to dull it down quite a lot. Make the shading quite heavy. So rather than watching me do this, I'll do it and I'll show you what the finished result looks like. Okay, so I've done the heavy shade there with the Agrax Earth shade, pretty much over all the recessed areas. And what I did do was I felt that the metallics was still quite shiny, so I just did, because Agrax is quite thin, I just did one layer really thinly over the entire thing, just one layer, just to knock back the shine. So that's how the shield looks. So it's dulled it down quite a lot. And I did the same on the hammer. So it's just taking that shine off. So it's not going to sort of detract the eye too much on the model. It's the same on these areas on here. So you can see the metallics is matted down quite a lot now. So whilst we've got the Agrax on the go, we're going to continue with, so we added the texture with the highlights, so we're going to do the same with the shading. So putting the Agrax on the brush, straight out the pot pretty much. In the areas where we want the shading, I'm just going to start doing that stippling with the Agrax. So just focusing on the areas where we want the shading, just giving it a bit of texture. So I'm really going to concentrate down the bottom down here, so there'll be a lot of it down here. I'm just going to keep building it up, let it dry, go over, let it dry, go over, until I'm happy with the finish. So I want this metal to look really beaten, really knock out that shininess of it. The metallic quality will show through underneath all of these washes, which is why we did it in the first place. Just getting this stippled effect will, you know, enhance what's going on with the metal. So as this is dry now, I can go over there a little bit more if I want to make it a bit darker. And we'll do it underneath all of here as well. So you can see that the metal's going to look really beaten. So that's going to be the next stage I do, and then I'll show you how it looks, all those areas afterwards. Okay, so that's the stippled Devlin mud stage done now, so I'll just show you how that looks. So we've dulled down the metal quite a lot now, added quite a bit of texture, so it's not going to overpower the miniature too much. So I've got it on the hammer there as well. We just kept layering it up until we get the texture we want. That's the same on there. So I think what we need to do now is we need to go a bit darker with this. So I'm going to use a contrast paint, and this one is Wildwood. This is a really good contrast paint, so if you don't have many contrast paints or any of them yet, I recommend getting this one. It's very, very dark and strong in pigment, and it's pretty much the same colour as the old brown ink, if anybody else remembers that. And yeah, so what we're going to do is we're just going to focus this around the recesses first, the deepest recesses around all the rivets. This is pretty much pure as well, so at this stage I won't be adding any water to it or contrast medium. So just go around the rivets. Once you go around all the recessed areas, so I'll go into all like the cuts, rivets, holes, etc. Then once that's done, I'm going to go into the bottom of the areas where we want more shading and add more of that stippling effect. But with this dark brown contrast paint, the Devil and Mud gave us a little bit of texture, but I think we can make it a bit heavier in places. Just keep stippling. So I'm going to do that over all of this brass coppery colour that we've got going on. Let's call it brassy copper. So I'm going to go into all the recesses and do that. So I'm going to go and do that and show you how that looks. And then you guys can have a look at that in a minute. Okay, so that's the Wildwood stippling stage done, and the shading as well. So you can see there I've just ran it into all the recesses and then stippled along the bottom and around the darkest areas there. I've done that on the back of the shield. And I also did it on the hammer. See there, just giving it some texture. And then didn't need much on the dagger, so just basically just shaded and highlighted a little bit there, and the bell there on the gallows, and then on the parts on the main guy there, you can see we just added some texture. So what we're going to do next is we're just going to mix together the Brass Scorpion and Stormhouse Silver again, except we're going to do it about 20% Brass Scorpion to 80% Stormhouse Silver, so it's quite pale now. And we're just going to go just stipple some highlights back on, because I feel like we've lost some highlights just in the very top areas there. Just really concentrating on those top areas, not going overboard too much, just establishing some highlights back again. Very faint. Just be as subtle as you can be. So it all adds to the effect at the end. So at this stage I'm not going to be edge highlighting anything, we'll do that at the end. So I'm just putting some highlights on those larger areas. So I'll do it onto these orbs, and then I'll probably just have like stipple towards the top. I'll try and keep the shield in shot for you, sorry. And this habit of just moving it off camera. So I'll do it along the top areas, and I'll do that the same on the hammer and all those other areas as well. So only just stippling in the lightest areas, so along the top here. And we don't need a lot, just a little bit, just get a bit more contrast in with that stippling before we go on to the next stage. So I'll do that all over and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so that's highlight stipple stage done there. You can see it's not too strong, just very subtle where we wanted it. See, I've just put it on the tops there as well. A little bit on the back, the shield. Done the same on the hammer. It takes some time, but it's worth doing. And on the guy as well. Just focused on the top of his spike. On the front of the bell. So what we've got now is, as you can see, like if I turn the model, we've got some areas that are matte and some that are shiny from the metallics. What we're going to do is we're going to give it the whole of the brassy copper area, as we're calling it. We're going to coat all of that in Lamian medium just to give it the same finish before we go on to the next stage, which is going to be adding some verdigris. So just taking the Lamian medium, and we're just going to just paint one coat over all of those metallic areas just to give it the same finish. So some of it because what we had was some was shiny, some was matte, and it was sort of like jarring a little bit. So doing this is going to pull it all together. It'll still retain some of the metallic qualities, but it'll enable us to go on to the next stage where we add some colour. So basically just go over all those metallic areas. Just one coat of that Lamian medium. If you don't have Lamian medium, you can use like a matte varnish, or contrast medium will work as well. It's really just to give it the same finish. So I'm going to coat all of these metallic areas in Lamian medium, and then we'll come back on to the next stage. Okay, so we've got that Lamian medium now all over those brassy, coppery, metallic areas there. I've not decided whether it's brass or copper, so we'll just call it both. You can see it's dulled it down quite a lot, and it's actually come out quite a nice colour now. I can see at the start it started off with that screaming bell, which was very, very strong, and it was overpowering the miniature, so it's toned it down a lot now, so I'm a lot happier with that. Same with the shield as well, it's got a lot of nice contrast on it now. What we're going to do now is, like as we've been painting through the model, we've been adding tones in the model. So like for example, we've got the green armour, we've added brown tones in, and we've added the warm tones into the skin. And we've added green onto the skin as well with the boils, so pulling the model together. So what we're going to do is we're going to add green into the copper. So we chose the copper so we could add the green with the verdigris. So we're actually going to add some of that now, and what I'll do is I'll put it together with the rest of the model, and then it'll feel more natural altogether. So I'm going to thin down some Cabalite green. I said it wrong last time, so it's Cabalite green. Thin down on my palette into like a wash consistency, and then we're going to just pick a few areas. If I start on the shield, actually, this is the biggest area. And we don't do it in all of the areas, we just pick a few. I'm just going to wash it in some selected areas, so don't want to go overboard. I mean, it's really up to you at this stage where you want it, so you can choose. You don't have to put it in the same places that I do. Generally it collects around rivets, and we've got some of these nice sort of beaten pock marks and things on the armour, so we could collect it around there if we wanted to. What you do is let it dry, then go over it again if you want to. So I'm just picking a few areas. I don't want to overpower it too much. So I did some research before, just had a look at some images of verdigris, and it's quite random. So you can make it feel a bit more random. Bigger areas. So it's staining the metal. And we're going to do a few layers, getting lighter. So you can see that already it's sort of like it's knocking it back and cooling down that brassy copper colour that we've got. Probably put a bit down the bottom down here. So this is the fun part that we're on to now. I love doing verdigris. So I'm going to select a few of these areas on all of the copper colour we've done, and then I'll show you what that looks like before we go on to the next stage. Okay, so we've got the Cabalite green verdigris stage done now, so I can show you where I placed it. So I sort of focused it around, the dents and the holes. Did some patches on the back as well, just around the rivets and the holes, and I did that across the other pieces as well. So the hammer, it's got it there. So I thought it might look best around those damaged areas to show corrosion, and I placed into the recesses as well. And then I did it on this guy. So a bit on the bell there at the bottom, you can see, not a lot. Then on the blade, just toning it down. So we're going to carry on with some more of that colour, some more verdigris. So we're going to go using Cyberite green now. So I'll thin that down to like a wash consistency there. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint it in patches again, just on top of or near to the areas that we've just done. So we're going to leave some of the Cabalite green showing in areas, and then we're going to sort of blob in some of this lighter colour in some of those areas just to make it a bit stronger. And you don't have to cover the whole area, you can just have a little bit here and then a bit over this side. You can even bleed over onto the metal as well. You do it as a wash because you actually want it to leave some tide marks here and there, so it gives it that sort of water stained, sort of corroded feel. And I'm just going to add it around all of those areas where I think it needs it, just to make that verdigris a bit stronger. So you can see what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go around those areas that I've done on all of the model, add a bit more verdigris, and once it's dry you can go over it again, make it a bit stronger if you want to. And then I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so that's the Cyberite green stage done on the verdigris. You can see there it's just popped out that effect that we wanted a little bit more. On the back of the shield. As I've not done it on everywhere, I've just focused it around those corroded areas. Same with the hammer. It's giving it a nice effect and it's breaking up that warm metallic colour we've got. I've also done it on the main guy. I've just focused around some patches there on the blade. It's giving that sort of water stain, corroded feel. So we're going to do one more stage on the verdigris. I've not used this paint before, and I don't know how to pronounce it, so I think it's nil. I can't say it. It's this one, Nilhak oxide. So I'm going to use this. I don't know, and it's like a wash consistency, so I thought it'd be quite nice. It's a little bit like Cyberite green, but it's a little bit more blue, so it'll give a little bit more interest to the verdigris. And so it's about the same paleness. So I'm just going to use this straight out of the pot because it's like a wash consistency. I thought it'd be interesting to use it. If you don't have this, because I'm pretty sure most people might not have it, just add a little bit of blue horror into your Cyberite green. I'm just going to place this just around the deepest areas. It's our palest colour, so I'm just going to dab it in here and there. Not too much. So I don't want to overpower what we've done already. Just a little bit here and there. So it's a good job. I'm a better figure painter than I am pronouncing names. Nihilak oxide. Anyway, there you go. So I'm going to do that around all those, just a little bit, so don't cover up too much of your work, and that'll be the last stage for the verdigris. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Okay, so that's the verdigris finished now, with that last stage of the paint that I can't pronounce. So we're going to just do the final stage now on the metal, so I'll just quickly show you how it all looks. We've got the hammer, that's all done, and then we've got the main guy. So I didn't want to make the verdigris any lighter than that. I didn't want it to draw too much attention away from anything else. So what we've got to do now is the last stage on the metal, and it's the stage that's probably going to take the longest, so you're not going to like this. We're going to use Stormhost Silver, get it on the palette, add a bit of water, and we're literally going to highlight everything. So what I suggest is just edge highlighting all of the areas first with the Stormhost Silver. Go around all those edges. Use the flat of the brush when you can. So we're going to do that, and then when it comes to areas where you've got to paint, like this edge here, just going to run the brush down. Don't worry about not having a continuous smooth line because we want it to be slightly broken anyway. Obviously this metal is battered. You can almost sort of dab it down that line there so it picks it up. So I'm going to go around all those edges, but what I'm also I'm going to go around the edges of these holes that we've got in the metal as well, just to pick those out. And then I might add the odd dot here and there just on the top of some areas just to pick out a highlight. But like I say, this is going to be very time consuming. You have to take your time with it, be patient, pick out all the rivets too. Just going to go around all those areas, and then we're going to paint the inside of those metal areas as well where the shield is with the silver. I think you get the idea. We're going to do that pretty much over everything, and it's going to finish off the metal. And what I'll do is I'll get on with that. Hopefully it won't take too long, and I'll come back and show you how it looks in a minute. Okay, so that's all of the metal highlighted with Stormhost Silver, and I think we'll call that done now. So I'll just show you what that looks like on each part. So there we go, it's the front of the shield there, so picked out the edges. Added some faint stippling there along the top, just as a little highlight. Then we've done the back as well. And as always, I'll take some photographs and I'll put them on my Instagram so you guys can use them as a reference for copying if you're painting along with this. And I'll link that in the description as well. So that's the shield. We've got the hammer. So you can basically see what we've done there. Around all those edges, picked out all of the corroded, pitted areas. There we go. It's the hammer. And we did this tiny bell there on the gallows. Fairly simple. And then on the main guy, so the bell just hanging off his waist. We've got the blade and the icon there on his shoulder pad. So I just added a few little nick lines there along the blade edge just to give it a bit more of an interesting sort of finish on both sides. I think the metals come out quite well, that sort of coppery colour. To begin with, I was slightly worried because it was very orange and very vibrant, but all of those washes that we added toned it down. I'll just show you the last thing we did was the dagger. And the blade, I painted that. I just finished that really quickly. It's painted exactly the same as the how to paint corroded metal video that I've done, which I'll link in the description. So if you just paint the blade just like this, following that, then you'll end up with the same thing. And I'll take some photographs of this as well. So I don't want to go repeating videos if I don't need to. So I've already done the video for that. So there we go. So that's the metal finish. And we'll go on to the next stage soon. I'm sorry you had to wait so long for this next stage, guys. But yeah, things happen. And I'll see you in the next video. And like I said, I'll put all the links for everything in the description below so you guys can paint along. I'll see you soon. Bye.